I'm on, y'all need to give me a break because my blood pressure is real high. I keep telling y'all, leave me alone.
The Green Man Challenge is all about generational health. We trying to make 10K of a day a bare minimum, you heard? 10K a day of vitamin A, the bare minimum. What? In fact, as the divine soil, we trying to turn you into a plant. We want the various chlorophylls to be in your blood 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We want you to feel the benefit of what it feels like to build a circulating pool of pigments. A circulating pool of pigments. Now, you've never, ever felt your body with a full bloodstream of pigments 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is a brand new level of health to reach, brand new level of mental health and cognitive ability. Pass these seeds on. The Green Man. Yeah. And then there's that. We're going to make sure that your insides are clean.
Supply and demand. Demand is the desire consumers have for a good or service. The more people who want a good or service, the higher the demand for it. Supply is the total amount of a good or service available for consumption. Supply and demand have a big impact on the prices of product.
Time is money. You are what you buy. What are you spending your time on?
Period. You just got to have the nutrients. So are you going to pay $1,000 to have this nutrient profile circulating in your blood, or are you going to pay $65?
I'm on, y'all need to give me a break because my blood pressure is real high. I keep telling y'all, leave me alone.
The cancerous effects of trihalomethane have been very well documented. And you say, well, I don't understand. Why would they do this? Well, let's take another example, because you're not vegetarian. So we'll make you a meat eater. And you say, well, I don't have any problems with that. Wrong. That decaying meat stuff in your bowel, for all of you that have one bowel movement a week or one bowel movement every other day, turns into a fine paste in the digestive tract. And that paste deposits along the blood vessels and stiffens or hardens the blood vessels. So instead of being flexible pipes, we've now got these hard steel type pipes within our system. And you wonder about where your high blood pressure came from. You wonder about hardening of the arteries and what's going on in your heart. Let's try a little chlorine in your system in terms of not being able to utilize or move out some of the things in your bowels. You know, the old middle-aged spread that guys take for granted is something that's supposed to happen. Wrong. A lot of that, the hardening that's going on there, is because of the elements that are in water itself. Then we add, what else do we have there? Well, the government has already decided that it can't use chlorine, and they can't add any more chlorine to the water. They recognize that there are a lot of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that they would like to kill. But if they add more chlorine, they know that they're stepping into some very toxic levels. So what are they adding additionally to make things more, or to make them more safe so that they're not as dangerous from an infectious disease perspective? Guess what they're adding, folks? Mercury. Now, for all of you that know about the old amalgam scenario in terms of not having amalgam in your teeth and how it reacts with the body, you know the toxic nature of mercury being in the system. And guess what else? They're not required to tell you that they have mercury in the water. The laws are written so they don't have to tell you about chlorine. They don't have to tell you about mercury. In Michigan, in Washington State, and Washington, D.C., mercury is added to the water systems. So get an idea that perhaps it's not the safest thing in the world to be drinking at a time when I'm saying to you, drink more water. In fact, that's what got me into this in the first place. I got across to my patients that, yes, you should drink more water. And then they turned back to me and said, okay, doc, what water are we going to drink? And I got stumped. And it really has taken me around the world to try to find some of the best waters and the best things to use in your water that will help you have safe and clean water. Now, what about the old fluoride scare? What in the dickens is going on with fluoride? There have been debates back and forth. There have been blow-ups in different legislatures as to whether or not fluoride should be used. The study that originally talked about fluoride came about during the 1930s. It was done at the Carnegie Mellon Institute. Now, Carnegie Mellon happens to be one of the biggest benefactors of the aluminum industry, with Alcoa aluminum. The aluminum industry has a problem. They don't know what to do with the byproducts of making aluminum. And in fact, around any aluminum plant, you'll find there's no vegetation for miles. And any animals that happen to be grazing in farms or whatever near an aluminum plant, you'll find industry with Alcoa aluminum. The aluminum industry has a problem. They don't know what to do with the byproducts of making aluminum.
That's the algorithm.
In fact, around any aluminum plant, you'll find there's no vegetation for miles. And any animals that happen to be grazing in farms or whatever near an aluminum plant, you'll find dies and ages very fast. Well, the same thing happens to you if you're exposed to fluoride. Your body will age doubly fast. So a 30-year-old will look like they're 60 years old. And in areas of the world where fluoride is naturally, these people do age very, very fast. In addition to that, going back to that study which says we should add fluoride to the water because it will prevent tooth decay in children. Wrong. When they tried to repeat that study, and that study was done by a benefactor of the aluminum industry at Carnegie Mellon, when they tried to repeat that study, they found it was not correct. And in fact, it caused further decay of the teeth. In other words, it enhanced decay of the teeth rather than preventing decays. I don't know if you're aware, but fluoride is the chemical that's used, that's injected into zoo animals and the bulls and the bullfighting rings of Spain to keep them docile. In Russia, while the Iron Curtain was still down, I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but they added fluoride to the drinking water of all the prisoners to keep them under control. I'll let you draw your own conclusions as to why fluoride perhaps is being added to our drinking water, but it's there. Lead, I think many of you are familiar with the toxicity of lead. In many of the older cities, the pipes were all made out of lead. Or where the pipes are joined together, lead was used by the plumbers to keep leaks. The soldering of the pipes in the middle, lead was used. Now, lead has been known for years in terms of its toxicity to the brain. It goes directly to the brain and can be a cause for death. Now, many of these elements are very, very toxic, and the people that absorb them the most are fast-growing tissue, which would be our children. So that often we see the toxicity in the children with many of these heavy metals and the gases. So you want to be aware of that. In fact, there was just a year ago an announcement in the Seattle system of the worry about lead in its water systems. It's very high in a number of the old houses in Seattle. There are a number of old houses here in this area. So don't think you're out of it just simply because you don't live in a big city. Many of the old farmhouses still have lead as the basic pipes that they use, the old galvanized pipes, or the solder used in the pipes are made of lead. So you may want to, take note of that. Now, I thought that we'd move from there, and let me just say, we're in a world where the word filter versus purification system, as we move into this new century, are the terms that we're switching from. To the American public, first question they usually ask is, what kind of filter is this? And they've gotten pretty used to looking at carbon filters and looking at water conditioners and things being added to the water, okay? That's old technology. That's the technology of the 70s and the 80s. Yes, charcoal type filters will take out odors, will take out smells, will take out basically gas types of materials and their smell from the water, but that's all they do. You want to know about what things will actually convert the water into a drinkable or into a live thing that you can absorb into the body. About 25 years ago, and through this community, we had people very much interested in BEV water. What did BEV water mean? BEV stands for bioelectric water, but that's all they do. You want to know about what things will actually convert the water into a drinkable or into a live thing that you can absorb into the body. About 25 years ago, and through this community, we had people very much interested in BEV water. What did BEV water mean? BEV stands for Bioelectric Vincent, standing for Dr. Vincent's name out of France. He decided to come up with a standard that could be used for measuring how toxic water was. And so things were divided into what we call BEV units.
Period. You just got to have the nutrients. So are you going to pay $1,000 to have this nutrient profile circulating in your blood, or are you going to pay $65? Peace and blessings out there to everybody. My name is Dr. Enqi, the founder of the Melanin versus Diabetes movement and ministry. Our goal is to fight diabetes by creating a biochemically literate society, one book at a time, one person at a time, one household at a time. Join us now by going to Amazon.com and getting all of the books, getting all of the books that you can afford, even if you can't read them all. Share them with family, share them with loved ones. Let's begin to study. And if you need tutoring sessions.
Round one, what exciting benefits do you get as a Hertz Gold Plus Rewards member?
Oh, I know what I'm supposed to do. Good thing I have my grocery shopping list. Don't leave home without it.
What we call BEV units. Yes. In that, he used distilled water as the basic water to measure all waters by. And it's simply a standard that says if I have a particular BEV number of units and that water is pure, that water is clean, it is drinkable. Reverse osmosis here, which we have on the screen, to give you an example, the things that are looked at, pH and resistance or RH factor. And again, as it is gauged against distilled water. Reverse osmosis is a good way of purifying your water. The only problem we have with reverse osmosis is that it takes everything out of the water. And what's left after reverse osmosis is what we call in the water industry dead water. It does nothing, it gives nothing back to the body. So that we've got a water that's clean, but it's just sort of sitting there, it will not interact with your cells. As you can see, this is in BEV units with reverse osmosis. The pH usually will range anywhere from 5.3 to 6.8. The RH factor is 25 to 29. We'll come back to the electrolysis portion of this, but the electrolysis being a process that is used to clean up water. You can see the difference here in terms of the RH factor and the pH. It's almost 3,000-fold stronger than with a reverse osmosis unit. Now, I bring up reverse osmosis because the government is recommending to you that you use RO water, RO standing for reverse osmosis, or boil your water. Now, here's the problem with boiling. When you boil your water, all you're doing, well, you will hit organisms that die at high temperatures. And I put it that way because with some of the mutations and some of the bacteria, viruses, and fungi, they're developing skins. They're so hard that boiling the water doesn't even touch them. So that's one thing. Number two, like we talked about the trihalomethanes, gases like that get concentrated when you boil them. So in fact, as well as some of those heavy metals. So all you're doing is concentrating them, and they're all in the bottom of your pot or whatever it is that you boiled with. So that doesn't work. But that's what the government to date has recommended to folks to do. Boil your water. No good. Okay. As we move from that into the next spectrum of things, and we start going into what other things do we need to look at in the water, let's take a look at pH, which was one of those items on that list in terms of looking at purity. Now, here in this area, and I have this beautiful chart behind me because many of you have probably seen it.
Far away from the home, it may require a lift station, which utilizes pumps to lift the wastewater, allowing it to continue flowing to the treatment facility. If a home is at a lower elevation than a treatment facility, the lift station pumps the wastewater uphill.
What is an aquifer?
Now, let's take a look at how a typical wastewater treatment plant might operate. The first step in treating the wastewater is to remove any objects in the water that might damage the system. These facilities are known as the headworks. First, a bar screen is used to filter out large pieces of trash and debris that enter the sewage system. Some treatment plants also use grit chambers.
This particular aquifer is a very large one, and the bowl is very large, and all of your water comes from that aquifer. Now, this is a very peculiar aquifer in that it's the type of aquifer that whatever's on the surface gets into the groundwater or gets into that bowl. So whether I'm over in Tumwater or I'm here in Yelm, anything on the surface, so somebody pours oil down a drain here or in Lacey, it's going to get into that bowl and be a factor that we draw our water from. Now, all the pink areas up there are areas that are in trouble. This aquifer is in trouble as it relates to acidity, as it relates to what's on the surface getting into the bottom. This is from the state. This chart was given out by the state officials. When I started asking questions about, I said to them, I'm probably the only one in this entire region that tests their water 2 or 3 times a day. Why is our water having a pH below 7.0? And 7.0 is where it's a neutral point. It's where you want to have your drinking water.
My name is Minister Enqi. I am the naturopathic doctor and the spokesman for the Melanin Verse Diabetes Ministry. Every time you go to the supermarket without the electrician grocery shopping list, it's like putting a loaded gun to your head. Stop playing Russian roulette with your life.
Into that bowl and be a factor that we draw.
Help us make America great again.
Now, all the pink
learn how to save time. Learn how to save money.
This
with the electrician grocery shopping list on Amazon.
As it relates to what's on
go to Amazon now.
This is from the state. This chart.
The life you save may be your own.
When I started asking questions about, I said to them, I'm probably the only one in this entire region that tests their water 2 or 3 times a day. Why is our water having a pH below 7.0? And 7.0 is where it's a neutral point. It's where you want to have your drinking water, to at least be at 7.0. And in testing, we were getting anywhere from 6.3 to 7.3. And I wanted to know, why is our water so acid there? They couldn't answer me. They still don't know, but it's a problem. If I look at pH on another perspective, how much acid is in the water, and I go to Long Island, New York, I find just the opposite. There we have pHs at 8.5, 8.0. I said, wow, okay, so this is going to be great water here? What's going on? You know, it's very interesting to me. I just call them coinkydinks. I just happened to be in the right places at the right time. And the Sunday while I was there, the newspaper in New York just happened to run an article on the groundwater on Long Island. And the Brookhaven Institute is located and has been based there for over 45 years in Long Island. And the problem is they had been dumping some of their chemicals into the ground. And the groundwater was contaminated. Contaminated so badly that the government had, of course, taken measures by putting lime into the water to try to get the pH up. And so the pH standardly was 8.5. But I knew from some of the patients that I had there that, as an example, we had kids with cleft palates in one square block. I'm sorry, correct on that. In one hospital, within a 1-year period, 11 children were born with cleft palate. Now, the chances of that happening by accident are like 1 in a million are the normal numbers for that. 11 children in one hospital, all coming from the same geographical area. had cleft palate. Goes even further. In one block, within 1 year, 11 women had breast cancer. All, again, on Long Island. I say there's something wrong here. Just your good old common sense tells you there's something common here that's factoring in. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. But you can see that being too acidic and being too alkaline can have its problems. So you don't necessarily want to do that. In Arizona and New Mexico right now, they have the problem of too much alkalinity. In fact, their water's starting at 7.8 and going up. And people are having problems from too much alkalinity in their water. So this is a vast country here. Waters will vary in different regions. And that needs to be kept in mind. Now, I put up here this equation called the equation of life, because this is an equation that was rediscovered by Dr. Carrie Reams shortly after the turn of the century. Now, equation of life, because this holds for humans, it holds for plants, and it holds for animals. This is a basic equation of life. If the soil is too acid, if the soil is too alkaline, disease here, waters will vary in different regions, and that needs to be kept in mind. Now, I put up here this equation called the equation of life.
Okay, so I'm not sure how clear this is. So I just want to read them over, right? You're looking at a 1.5 for glucose, 1.5. For urine and saliva, you're looking at a 6.4 pH. Right, that's a 6.4, just so you have the numbers. When you get the salts, that's a 6.5. When you get to albumin, that's a 0.4. And when you get down between nitrates and ammonia, that is a 3.0. All right, so for the people taking notes, that's what the numbers are. If it's blurry on your screen, this video here, these are jewels right here. These are jewels right here, you know, so you kind of have to take it how you get it. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, this was the best technology the elders had access to, you know, 20 years ago or so. Even though I think this is a lot young, you know, I think maybe 12 years, somewhere in that pocket is how old this footage is. This video, anyway.
Period. You just got to have the nutrients. So are you going to pay $1,000 to have this nutrient profile circulating in your blood, or are you going to pay $65?
Because this is an equation that was rediscovered by Dr. Carrie Reams shortly after the turn of the century. Now, equation of life, because this holds for humans, it holds for plants, and it holds for animals. This is a basic equation of life. If the soil is too acid, if the soil is too alkaline, disease will enter the plants grown in that soil, or they will be weak. If things are balanced, you'll get a tremendous yield, and again, the plants will be strong. The same thing happens with animals. Their pH. As long as they fall along this equation, they will be free of disease. And you'll note there that we are looking at the pH of the urine and the pH of the saliva, which is reflective of the buildup in the body, how we break down our foodstuffs and how we take these foodstuffs and try to make them incorporate them into our bodies. So pH ideally should be 6.4 in both of those elements in order for the body to be diseased. Now, it doesn't rely totally on pH, because if you look at glucose here, it's also how the body handles carbohydrates, how it handles mineral salts, and also when I look at nitrates and ammonia, how we break down flesh protein, which would be meat, seafood, and poultry, and on the nitrate side. And as we look at ammonia, how we handle vegetable protein. Next slide, please. Now, as we look at this, and
now, this is where I guess this is a pocket where we've been able to take the research, I guess, a lot further in terms of, like, for instance, in the lymphatic immunity book and the surrounding books, right? Really getting into the different types of water, right? Or like, for instance, in the hydrochemistry book and in the piezoelectrochemistry book, talking about the water associated with bones, you know, or the whole body system, and how each body system has a water associated with it that is different just based on its, you know, electrochemical values, right? So that's the thing about interstitial versus, you know, cytoplasm versus spinal fluid versus, you know, lymph versus, you know, you have some of the basic chemistry, because these things are mostly water. And then what, you know, separates them largely is how that water is conditioned. So even to the point of your drinking water, as an example, your water has to be conditioned. That's why you have, so don't think that conditioning your water is something that's not, like, even when your body drinks water, pure water, the purest water you could get, you know, falling straight from the heavens, you know. This is why you have even just the basic category of water-soluble vitamins, right? You know, the water-soluble antioxidants, the things that water all throughout your body, all of those things that the water has to carry, all of those things are important to conditioning the body's waters. All of those things are important to making sure that each system of the body has the specific resources to, you know, to chemically condition that water to perform its function in that specific space, right? And now we know there are a lot more different, you know, just small sections of the body where the chemical, electrochemical, you know, the values to what mineral concentrations and, you know, amino acid and protein and all of these different things that would change the texture and kind of some of the function of water. All of these things differ in these little pockets. And fascia is largely the structural antagonist for a lot of the continued biochemical reactions, you know, just in terms of the basic hydrophilic, hydrophobic nature of proteins and how they affect the structuring of water, you know. So a part of the structuring of water is about, you know, taking water through these biochemical changes to constantly be able to maintain certain values that, you know, different spaces, different water, like the water that is produced or rather recycled in your mitochondria, right? Like that's why we have a whole book, mitochondrial water, like a book dedicated to just getting that understanding down packed, so we know, understand, oh wow, we got gallons of water being produced in our mitochondria every day, right? That plays a key role in hydrating and thermoregulation, which, you know, plays a role in basal metabolic rate and all of those other things that we only care about when the doctor tell us, you know, something wrong with our heart or something wrong with our private parts, or, you know, something uncurable. Is we've reached the incurable space within our brain. You know, we got some sort of brain disease, and, you know, there's never a time like the present. You know, now is the time we got to start working on the brain disease now. We can't wait till it develops and it's already progressed to a certain space of degeneration, because nerves are very slow to turn over. Neurons are very slow to turn over, you know, so that's a problem that you got to try to fight. You got to fight brain disease. Yeah, brain disease is almost more difficult to fight than heart disease, you know, because everything you do is going to give your heart some exercise. If you do anything, you know, all of it is going to give you some cardiovascular. But it's not the same for the mental and the physical brain, stimulation. Most people don't understand the need to be reading, the need to read certain types of challenging material, the need to be seen by your children reading, the need to be seen in public reading. This is a different type of dynamic that I struggle to even find the words to describe the need that we have for that to happen on a wide scale, to replace some of the imagery that we have out there, because imagery plays a big role on the subconscious, or what we would consider to be the subconscious, the templates from where our personal thoughts arise from, right? And that level of mental programming, imagery affects that. So we need some of that imagery. We don't have much imagery that emphasizes intelligence, or reinforces intelligence with sexy or sapiosexual. There's a lot more emphasis on deviant sexual orientations that are kind of like, so you just don't have the pop cultural references or the comedian references, or so anyway. For a wide variety of reasons, we have to think about the physical connection to the brain, the mind, and mental health overall, and just understanding that, we got to keep the old research alive while we still building. Because here, understanding this as a basic equation for life is good, but being able to take that understanding and understand that throughout the body you have different types of plasma and watery fluids that, because of the cell tissue difference, electrical, needs, tensile needs, whatever the case may be, acoustic, vibratory, whatever the needs of the tissue, the liquid in and around that tissue, has to be different, unique, to the other fluids and tissues around the body. So again, there's a IQ. If you could ascribe an IQ to an individual cell, right? If you could ascribe an IQ to an individual cell, the intelligence that each set of cells or each group of tissues would have to run its daily functions would be based on the water content and the material that saturates that water. Vitamins, proteins, aminos, other secondary and tertiary ingredients to the cake batter, creatines, and just all of the different things that would be in those fluids that those specific tissues would need. Like if we talk about the eyes, you have to know that this has to be, the vitamin A's and the luteins and zeaxanthin. Those are just examples of a specific tissue needing a specific. The entire body is that way. So we just got to keep that, keep that in the forefront of our mind and understanding. Yes, we want to give the body its purest, the purest water we can get to it, which hopefully the term pure is synonymous with natural, because then I'll be went off on another tangent. I'll be going off on a tangent. I'll be explaining one thing and then go off on a tangent. But we got to understand that all of these things are connected, and so each one provides information on understanding the other. And then as we begin to understand the relationship of the different fluids in the bodies, much more data detailed, much more, technology has allowed us to, going back to, the Greco-Roman period where it was about the humors and the complexion, right? 4 fluids of the body. Now we know there's much more fluids in the body than the original assumed 4 humors. We know there's a lot more quote unquote humors in the body, or fluids in the body. You know, and we have a better idea of what a lot of these fluids are doing, right? But the larger thing, and I'm gonna land my plane with this, is it's important for us to make all these different connections that I'm briefly touching on, right? But the important thing, the overarching important thing to keep in mind is health does not come from a set value of anything. Health comes from the process of your body trying to achieve certain set values, right? The motion, right? The exchange of the chemicals happening hundreds of thousands of times in your body every second, right? That's where the real health and regenerative, you know, strength of your body is tested in your immune system, you know, because all of these different systems pull from one energy source. That one energy source in your body is based on arrangement, structure, chemical reaction. And that has a speed, that has a tempo, you know, and so all of these different things we have to correlate all the way down to, I mean, just for the melanin versus diabetes movement, you know, we've been on it, you know, just the level of depth. But we got to realize that changing process is the health thing, you know. So how they used to say, trust the process. It's the process that's the most important part, you know. So it's not like because your blood should always be 7.365. If you go measure your blood and it's 7.365, that means you like invincible to all infections or diseases or anything that can happen to you. Like, that's not how it goes. That could change with the next breath. The next breath could literally change the next meal you have, the next, you know, everything, like, is going to impact that. So your body being able to maintain a specific average that then becomes a value is the real magic. So hopefully I'm communicating that it's cool to get the averages and have the numbers, but understanding that it's hundreds of thousands of chemical reactions that's happening every second to give you these average numbers is the thing that, as a person dealing with your nutrition, right? The person putting together maybe an exercise program, the person that's saying you need to do this or that or the other in one of these areas of your life that's based on your body's, you know, health, you know, in some shape, form, or fashion. This is the perspective, you know, this is where everything is integrated.
Totally on pH, because if you look at glucose here, it's also how the body handles carbohydrates, how it handles mineral salts, and also when I look at nitrates and ammonia, how we break down flesh protein, which would be meat, seafood, and poultry, and on the nitrate sides, and as we look at ammonia, how we handle vegetable protein. Next slide, please. Now, as we look at this and showing you the significance of that, we find that in this narrow pH of 6.4, we absorb all the minerals. And as we move away from that pH of 6.4, we find that there's certain minerals we can't absorb. So as an example, we look at the next slide. But note before we change that, it's a little bit difficult to see from a different distance, that we're at both ends of the spectrum here.
Peace to the family. This is Abdul Ali, candidate for U.S. House District 12 here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's just be real, folks. The Democrats have destroyed our major cities. Their policies have made us less safe. They've given us less economic opportunity, and they've provided less educational opportunities for our children. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because I know what it takes to improve these issues. I've got great working relationships already in D.C. I've spent the last 10 years of my life building my political resume so that one of us, somebody who thinks like we do, could get into D.C. and make a difference. I want you to visit
that we're at both ends of the spectrum here. If you're too acid, you don't absorb them. But also, if you're too alkaline, you can't absorb them. And okay, you'll note there that at a pH of 5.8 is where we begin to absorb calcium. So that if your body does not have a pH, meaning your urine and saliva does not have a pH of at least 5.8, you can't absorb calcium. And as we go on today, we'll let you figure out the significance of being able to absorb that calcium. But if I look at manganese, which you can't absorb until you have a pH of 6.0. If you look at eggs and sperm, there's no egg or sperm that will develop, whether it's in a peach or whether it's in you, if you do not have sufficient quantities of manganese in the body. Well, you can't even absorb manganese until you have a pH of at least 6.0. So we wonder about the number of infertile young women and men we have out there anxiously trying to have children and having difficulty producing viable eggs and sperm. Many of them are too acidic and cannot absorb enough manganese to even produce sperm and egg that would be viable. Then you add to that what we said earlier in terms of the frogs. If the frog eggs and sperm are bringing up mutations and defects, what do you think is going to happen to your sperm and your eggs if you're drinking the same water? You get an idea that water isn't just a casual little thing here that you can see through when you hold up a glass. There's got to be more to it than that. Okay, now you say to me, Doc, when I look at these minerals here, what significance is that? So I can't absorb, above the sperm and the egg situation, or I can't absorb calcium. What else does it mean? You go on to the next slide with the tube. If I cannot absorb my minerals, I like to put the minerals or make them tantamount to air in an inner tube. If I can't get enough air, if I can't get enough minerals to a particular organ, then I'm going to suddenly get this little outpouching on the side of the organ. Now, in a human body or in an animal, that would be tantamount to a cyst. This little outpouch on the side of the inner tube. I keep going along. This lasts for, say, a year. Now I've got a permanent outpouching on the side of that inner tube, on the side of that organ. That would be tantamount to a tumor. And all of that is because I can't get sufficient minerals to those organs. The one we can see, the biggest organ we got is our skin. So you start seeing cysts and things on your skin, imagine what the other organs look like. And each organ has a different percentage of minerals that it needs in order for it to grow or to be, in peak performance. So let's say the brain says, well, I like a lot of calcium and I like a little potassium, and let's see, throw in a little magnesium. That I need to just have my brain function. And if not, I'm going to begin to develop cysts in my brain. Or my thyroid, hey, it needs calcium, it needs potassium too, but it needs it in different percentages than my brain does. And every organ in the body has its own percentage there in terms of what it needs and whether or not these little outpouchings will begin. These cysts, these tumors will begin. Now, if this goes along long enough, or the mix has been strong enough, I might find that I can't get any air at all. I can't get any minerals at all to those organs. That's when we call, it would be comparable to a flat tire. That tire is not going to roll at all. That would be called, in energy circles, a delta cell. Another term for that would be a free radical. All that's when an organ cannot get the minerals that it needs and the energy given off of those minerals. If you take the next slide. The other term that we use for delta cell or free radical would be cancer cell. Now, how many of you have seen if I add water to some metal or leave it outdoors for a while and it hasn't been appropriately coated, it begins to do what? It begins to rust, okay? Rust is the same as a free radical. It's the same as decay. It's the same as the word oxidation or oxidant. The metal is oxidizing just by adding water to it. It is not getting what it needs. Something has to counteract that. So for purposes today, we're going to oxidizing.
All right, so just to give a quick comparison, right? And this again is why we have the electrician manuals. This is one of the reasons why we have the electrician manuals, is so that we can get some of the basic chemical understandings down pat, right? So when we see oxidation, right? If you translate that into health, biology, biochemistry, what you're talking about is an acidic substance because it steals electrons or because it adds protons, right? So all of these concepts go hand in glove. You can't really have a good understanding on a surface level if you don't get the associated vocabulary down pat. This is what I'm saying, even with our children in school, a large part of what they have to learn in school is vocabulary driven. If we start to get them more comfortable with certain types of vocabulary, it's going to make it easier for them to deal with concepts in school. Even if you're not able to teach them at a certain level of depth, to the specifics maybe of the curriculum your child is engaged in at that time, or whatever the case may be, you can still make it way easier for them to address, deal with, handle, learn, process new information in school, new subjects, new difficulty levels in old subjects, by exposing them to a larger vocabulary, primarily in the science space, right? Primarily in the science space. So when you're dealing with the body, health, some of these terms can be, by actual scientific definition, some of these terms can be connected. And then sometimes by euphemistic definition, some of these terms can be connected, right? So a base and an alkaline, right? You can connect that to oxidation or anti-oxidation, right? You can connect that acid alkaline to a person's body being anabolic or catabolic, right? Anabolic means the body's building. Well, your body has to be in alkaline state, because one of the things that people trying to, pack on as much muscle as possible need is a positive nitrogen balance, right? Or strict control of their nitrogen balance, right? Strict control of their nitrogen balance, which directly influences whether you have muscle synthesis or your body, degrading down muscle tissue because you may have more than you can support, right? Resource wise or time and energy wise, right? So that's the balancing act that's always going on there. So all of these things can be related: anabolic, catabolic, alkaline, acid, free radical, antioxidant, oxidation, rust. Kind of just the basic terminology that is based on the exchange of electrons and protons at a basic chemical level, right? Having more electrons is receiving electricity, receiving life, receiving love, receiving consciousness. All of that would fit in that pocket. Losing electrons or receiving protons. Think of protons like from back in the cartoon days when you would receive a gift box and then you open up the gift box and it explodes in your face. That's what a proton is. You're receiving something, so you think it's great. Oh, we received a proton. Somebody thought of us. It's amazing. Great gift. You open up the gift box and it explodes in your face. That's a proton, right? An electron is like an amazing little gift that keeps on giving, right? So, but all of the terms are connected. And remember, you don't see with your eyes or hear with your ears. You see and you hear with your mind. Your children see and hear with their mind. So the more concepts they're familiar with, the more you can pull out of the same information. So when you read the book, okay, cool, that's one level. Then when you read a few other books, you gain more information. Now you got to go back and reread certain books. You got to go back and reread certain books again, and you go, oh, I didn't even think about this at that time, how this complicates that, how these things are important to stack on top of each other, because the ability of your body to use water to hydrate itself, it's a cycle, it's a process. It's a cycle, it's a process. So everything associated with that process is dependent on the previous steps in the process, right? So again, the more familiar we are with the concepts and terminology, it makes it easier for us to understand how things are related, understand the information presented, but then also genius level, see patterns and connections within the information that we can, extrapolate jewels for life today, things we can apply to our life right now, tomorrow, tonight. Turn the TV off an hour early, we get ready to pull out this book. Everybody in my bedroom, okay, come on, what book we on tonight, Dad? What book we on tonight, Mom? You know what I'm saying? Like, what book we on? What book are we collectively reading and talking about and getting ready to get into an argument and all that about? Like, what book we getting ready to get deep into and passionate about? Right? That's what you got to have in the house, in the family. You got to have little, the same like how you will watch TV with the family. The same like how you will watch TV with the family. Y'all watching sports. Everybody talking super reckless. What? LeBron is washed up. Are you crazy? LeBron's still the GOAT. And you're going back and forth or whatever. Women's basketball or soccer or UFC, whatever it is. You sitting down, you watching sports. You watching boxing. You watching competition. Right? Even if it's a mental sport, like a game show, whatever. You watching, you commenting, you getting absorbed in the show. That same energy needs to be redirected to how you handle books, the level of excitement you ascribe to books, because that type of energy is what's required to really learn at a certain level. You know what I'm saying? To really discuss the subjects. It's one thing for you to be reading through a book and you finding certain jewels that's like, oh, this is crazy right here. That's great, but the book is designed in a way where when you have those moments in the book, you got to share those moments with other people. You got to post those moments on your social media and point that out to people so they can, people around you, or if you're in your house, with the children, your wife, your husband, whatever. Babe, this is crazy right here. Listen, read this and tell me what this means to you, or interpret this for me, or have the children y'all talked about this in school yet? And then if they say no, then you explain to them based on wherever they at in school, how what you reading could apply, right? You got to be able to teach, you know what I'm saying? And then if they say, yeah, we've been talking about whatever this is already, then you got to be able to add on to the cipher that the teachers have initiated. You know what I'm saying? You got to add on to the science, right? So it's very important for a wide variety of ways that we familiarize ourselves with some of the terminology and then be able to, as we're adding on our research, right? As we're adding on our research, it's important that we make sure that we highlight that chain of information, right? That chain of information. So that's one of the reasons why, again, some people may think frivolous arguments, but, that's one of the reasons why you see me out there defending the community sometimes, even when people can't figure out why you'd be defending such a community, right? But we have to be able to point back to people who, changed the game with certain research and keep their names alive in the conversation as we're evolving that body of information, adding on, as we're critiquing some points and maybe say, okay, this may have never been valid. This may no longer be valid. This right here is still factual. As we're evaluating, critiquing, finding the shiny parts and saying, okay, yeah, we got to build on this. We got to add on to this. It's important for us to be able to highlight and go, put a name and a face to some of this information, because seriously, it seemed like a well-organized effort to get this information out of circulation, especially with the mystery stories circulate about how she passed away and all that. So, you got official story, and you got circulating things that make you go, them type of stories. So, yeah.
And to do what? It begins to rust, okay? Rust is the same as a free radical. It's the same as decay. It's the same as the word oxidation or oxidant. The metal is oxidizing just by adding water to it. It is not getting what it needs.
Period. You just got to have the nutrients. So are you going to pay $1,000 to have this nutrient profile circulating in your blood, or are you going to pay $65?